Welcome to this month's episode of the Vanderbilt University School of Engineering's Graduate Program Conversation Hour. This month, we are featuring the Interdisciplinary Materials Science program. Specifically, we have several PhD students with us that are part of the program that are going to be sharing their experiences about why did they pick Vanderbilt, why did they pick IMS at Vanderbilt, and a little bit about their experience here at the university. So for all of you that are listening, this is your chance, to kind of get an insider's scoop of kind of really what goes on here, in the IMS program. So what we'll do is I have several questions that I'm going to ask, and following that, we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end to open up the session for any questions, for any Q&A. So if you have any questions, feel free to write them out in the chat right here so that I can, so that we can receive those questions, and I'll make sure that we get in as many questions as possible in tonight's session. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and do my little self-introduction, and then everybody else is going to have their time to do a self-intro so that we'll get to know everybody here, our different panelists. So my name is Gabriel Luis. I am the Director of Graduate Recruitment for the School of Engineering here at Vanderbilt University. I also want to thank Emily Muting, who organized and promoted this event. She's also on the call right now, helping to manage tonight's session. So thank you, Emily. Let's go ahead and we're going to begin with John. Would you like to just give us a brief introduction? And then also if you can tell us a little bit about the research that you do here at Vanderbilt.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is John Williams, and I'm a third-year PhD student in the Material Science program. I'm from Orlando, Florida, happiest place on earth, next to Vanderbilt, of course. And I am not your traditional student. I am a duty Army officer who got the opportunity of a lifetime to come and earn a PhD in a very short amount of time to be lead Cliffel Lab. Our research is focused on novel biotics for expeditionary. Way of saying I'm trying to make cells for small deployable systems using proteins from spinach. I hopefully will be graduating here in the spring, and that's me in a nutshell.
All right, wonderful. Thank you, John, for that introduction. Next up, let's go with Jeremy.
Hi, my name is Jeremy Espano. I am from Ocilla, Georgia, so it's a 2-stoplight town right 1 hour away from the Florida-Georgia line. I am more of, I guess, a traditional student. I went to my undergrad at Boston College studying chemistry. And I actually did a lot of battery research at Boston College, and then really got interested in nanomaterials. And now I work in a nanoparticle lab under Professor Janet McDonald. So my project deals with a lot of how we synthesize nanoparticles. So far, we're able to control the size and the shape, but what we're unable to control is the phase. And when I talk about phase, this is kind of like the crystal structure. So if I have, let's say, iron and sulfur, how these crystal structures are rearranged in a system really has a huge effect on its properties and thus applications. And that is basically the gist of my work.
All right, excellent. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And Alexis.
Hi. So I'm also a third-year material science PhD student, and I am hailing from the West Coast. I grew up in California, and before coming here, I was finishing up a degree in biochemistry from a small liberal arts college called Biola University in LA. And my research is pretty kind of non-traditional for materials science. I'm in the more biomaterial side of things. And I am looking at building models of small blood vessels in your brain to look at how different blood flow states impact the blood-brain barrier. So broadly speaking, brain disease, and a little bit smaller is kind of vascular dementia and vascular disease in your brain.
Right, terrific. Thank you so much for that intro. And next up, Elena, would you like to give us your self-introduction? Right. Hello, Elena, can you hear us? Okay. Okay, she's getting her headphones, I think. All right. Hello, Elena, can you hear us? Yes. Hello, Elena. Are you able to hear us? Okay. Having some audio issues. We'll get back to Elena very quickly. All right. So what I do want to do, what I'd like to do now is, before we kind of jump into tonight's discussion, I actually just wanted to remind everybody, all the viewers that are watching us right now, there should be a link going out. It was included with the promotional materials that were sent out on our social media accounts, and it's a registration link for tonight's event. And that is a great way for me to follow up with you after tonight's event. If you're interested in our programs, especially applying to the IMS program, whether it be to do summer research, or whether it be for the graduate programs, our recruiting office would be very happy to talk with you after today's event. So if you're interested in that, please feel free to register, and we'll be able to follow up with you after tonight's event. So I just wanted to mention that real quick before we get started. All right, Elena, are you able to hear us now?
I can. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh my God.
We've made connection.
Finally.
All right. Nice. Okay, great. No, terrific. So Elena, could you just give us a brief introduction about yourself and tell us a little bit about your research?
Yeah, sure. So obviously my background isn't in engineering. I went to the University of North Carolina, and I graduated with my undergraduate degree in physics in 2018. And I have always been passionate about material science. I've planned on studying material science since I was in high school, but my undergrad institution didn't offer it. And so I decided to do physics and learn the rest on the way. And now I'm here. So it must have worked. And so I'm currently in the Valentine Lab, working under Dr. Jason Valentine, who's a professor in mechanical engineering here at Vanderbilt. Our lab's research focus is in metamaterials, so materials that are designed on the nanoscale to control their interactions with light and control light waves. My current research project is in dynamic metamaterials, so controlling a material's response to light with some kind of external stimulus. My project being with an electrical voltage to induce a chemical reaction to control our metamaterials response to light.
All right, excellent. That was wonderful introductions by all of you, and kind of like the theme that we're getting right here, which I think is really interesting, and what I want you to all go into in more details is, IMS, so Interdisciplinary Material Science at Vanderbilt, is a very unique program in the sense that it is its own niche program, so to speak. You don't necessarily see this type of program everywhere. So can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, as you mentioned, some of you are not coming from traditional engineering backgrounds. So how was the transition for you making that move into the IMS program? What kind of made you want to do that, make that transition? And then also, how does IMS work at Vanderbilt in the sense that, yes, we do a lot of interdisciplinary research. IMS is not a department, it's a program where we have faculty from all over campus that are participating in this program. So tell us about, how does that all come together in terms of just being able to do research, having access to all these different types of institutes on campus, and being able to really have that interdisciplinary type outreach that we have here at Vanderbilt. So how does, in your opinion, how are you able to utilize those tools, and how has that helped you in terms of your own research and in choosing the program, the IMS program? And I know it's kind of a 3-4 pronged question right there, but what I'll do is, if you can each kind of just give me your own take on that, it would be great to kind of have your perspective. So whoever wants to jump in, go ahead and begin.
I can start us off. Okay. So why did I choose? What was attractive to me about this program initially was, so I was coming from a background in biochemistry, and got really interested in engineering from an NSF RU that I did the year before I graduated. And so the fact that it was not only okay that I was coming from a non-engineering background, but was like kind of a positive thing, because this program was already oriented towards students who were interested in interdisciplinary research, was really attractive to me, as well as the emphasis on having multiple advisors from different departments. So my primary advisor is in chemical engineering, and my secondary advisor is actually in the medical center, and she's a clinical psychologist who does Alzheimer's disease research. And so I've been really kind of in the unique position of in these two, not only different labs, but just different like institutions that are both kind of under the Vanderbilt umbrella. But that's allowed me to have a perspective of a really kind of like bioengineering, stem cell engineering focused lab as my primary lab. And then also a lab that's more focused on like clinical research and running a clinical cohort. And getting kind of a deep knowledge of both of those, and then learning how to communicate between those two very different research areas that are normally pretty disparate, has been incredibly valuable, and is something I'm actively growing and getting better in. But that kind of ability to have translatable knowledge between different disciplines within the sciences has been really wonderful and challenging and good for me.
I guess I can go. So during my sophomore year of college, I actually did this really, really cool internship with this company called Matilda Flow Inc. And they were basically this nonprofit that made tie-dye shirts for disabled women in Ghana, disabled women in Ghana made tie-dye shirts so they can find employment. And one of the problems with this is that the tie-dye they were making was very bad for the environment. So my internship included making a chemical solution, a solution using chemistry to how to solve this problem environmentally. And it was then where I realized I really liked the approach of using chemistry for maybe a different application or maybe different fields, using chemistry for environmental remediation. And what really drew me into the material science program was the idea of collaboration and kind of breaking the barriers between chemistry and physics, and chemistry and biology, and chemistry and mechanical engineering and chemical engineering. And so far in my time at Vanderbilt, I've been really pleased to say that I've worked across this discipline in many different ways. I've done nanoparticles for biomedical applications. I have worked in chemical engineering and mechanical engineering environments. And although my background is in chemistry, it's really, really cool and exhilarating to kind of reach across the aisle and talk across the aisle with these other scientists and these other colleagues in disciplines that I would not have talked to initially.
So I can go next, and I kind of wanted to just address the transition aspect. For academic, my undergraduate was in chemistry from West Point with a nuclear engineering minor, a master's in leadership, and a master's in biomedical engineering from UNC Chapel Hill. However, my undergraduate was back in 2004. My first 2008, and the ones in 2012. So when I showed up to our solid state, our first class in solid state, where the prerequisite, it's a lot of differential equations. Somebody else is just fresh and young, and I'm coming and said, man, DiffEq was literally 19 years ago. There was absolute struggle back. I'm grateful for the faculty here, some of which is kind of my age, a little weird, but everyone was very supportive, and there were a lot of opportunities with your classmates and peers. So I'm very grateful for this and Jeremy for helping me get through that. And then statistical mechanics helped me get through. The professors are also very wanting to succeed they are and your success. The reason I wanted to do IMS person, my job to go out and buy technology or develop technology for the military. And as much as I loved biomedical engineering, which is what it doesn't need a whole bunch of new tissue engineering to meet our modernization budget. On the other hand, that's going to be the future where it comes to energy, where it comes to solving problems. Now, something that IMS and biomedical has in common is that get to graduate, what is it that you all do? What's the thing that the four of us do the same? It's hard to say what is it that all four of us can do as material science student. The short answer is that we solve problems with materials. We do whatever is necessary, whatever kind of calculation, characterization, fabrication, whatever kind of research is necessary to solve a problem within our field. And our problems are focused on materials. And I think that that's really a freedom. That's really an opportunity to do things that seem really hard from afar. And it's an opportunity to combine things that really should work together. Adding synthetic technology with sustainable energy is just a really cool idea. And I am the freedom and the tools to make that combination happen. So I will say that that's one of the things that really attracted me is that freedom to put things together that they're very similar to what
Oh, sorry, John, did you finish? Okay. I'm sorry. I think my connection timed out. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes,
Yep.
we can hear you loud and clear.
It's back. So one thing that I didn't hear the other three mention is the way that the curriculum at IMS works. And so one thing that I was interested in, coming from a physics background, but wanting to kind of explore scientifically, is that the IMS curriculum only has 4 core classes that you have to take, and all of those are physics based. So that's condensed matter, that's a statistical mechanics course, that's a chemistry elective, and then there's a crystals and crystal structures course. And so for me, taking those courses integrated really well with my undergrad experience. And then really after that, after you take those courses, Vanderbilt is your oyster. And I think all of us kind of spread out and took different electives that were offered. So I took courses on spectroscopy, photonics, photonic crystals, and one more advanced course on optics. And those courses really, allowed me to explore more in what, I wanted to do research-wise, kind of allowed me to meet faculty that were really specializing more in the area that I wanted to work in. And that's kind of where everybody scatters, I think, in the program, but in a very good way. I think that the curriculum really lends itself to us. Like John said, all of us as grad students do different things every day. There's nothing that we could all say that we do the same. But the curriculum really fosters that intellectual diversity in the program.
All right. No, wonderful. I'm so glad you offered those perspectives, because it really does encompass just the breadth of diversity that exists in terms of the type of curriculum you can pretty much, kind of just make for yourself in terms of what it is that you're looking to do, to take the path that you want to go on and have, develop it from there. And I guess kind of on that same theme, can you just name off, what are some of the institutes that you collaborate with or research centers? You said, for example, advisors, and naming advisors that represent, different departments, programs on campus, like just to kind of give everybody an idea, with the research you're doing, like who makes up part of your team, when it comes to advisors, institutes, just to kind of give everybody an idea of kind of how all that works in the program.
I can go first for this one. So the institutes I collaborate with kind of goes back to the story of how I came to Vanderbilt. And so I heard about the IMS program while I was an undergraduate research intern at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. And so my mentor was actually an IMS alum. And during that time, we collaborated with a couple of professors here at Vanderbilt, one of them being Dr. Richard Haglund, who's now on my committee. So that was kind of my path into photonics and into Vanderbilt itself. And then I work closely, or another committee member of mine is Dr. Sharon Weiss. She works very closely with Oak Ridge National Labs as well, their Center for Nanomaterial Synthesis. And then she works also on the industry side with Global Foundries, which is a silicon foundry in upstate New York area. So those are some really cool collaborations that my committee members have going on that I'm really excited about learning more with. I guess I'm just going to go through my committee. Dr. Josh Caldwell came here from the Naval Research Laboratory. He worked there for many years and still has students doing research and close connections with them. So yeah, we do have connections all over the country, and you can really assemble a committee that has a super broad range of their own research interests and connections that are available to you.
Right. Anybody else want to jump in and tell us about how your collaborations work when it comes to putting together your advisors and the institutes that you collaborate with?
Yeah, I can briefly comment here. So as I mentioned, my primary advisor, Ethan Littman, he's in chemical engineering. And my secondary advisor, Angela Jefferson, so she's part of the medical center, and which is as of a couple years ago, completely different institution than Vanderbilt University. So she is actively running a longitudinal cohort on older adults and like what the brain looks like as it's aging, and cardiovascular health and related to brain health. And so my primary institute that I interact with would probably be some of the cores on campus. So there are different sort of like collections of basically really expensive equipment that the university or the medical center owns and operates. There are research scientists whose sort of main role is to train graduate students and postdocs on how to use that equipment, and also just to be experts on the particular tools. And so I utilize one of our imaging cores, has a lot of really excellent microscopes that you can image in 3 dimensions, which is helpful for my model system. And I also use a microscope in VINCE, which is probably Elena and Jeremy use a lot more than I do, but that's our clean room and fabrication sort of space. And there's a microscope in there that I use fairly frequently called the AFM, which is atomic force microscopy, which I could get more into, but for the sake of letting Jeremy and John talk more, those are most of the collaborations I actively have right now.
Yeah, I guess if we're talking about the institutes
Have at it.
Okay, I'll go. Since we're talking about like the institutions as well as like most of the resources we use, I guess most of my work is done through VINCE, and I can kind of give a shout out to VINCE, which is the Vanderbilt Institute of Nanoscale Science and Engineering. And I love VINCE because of how convenient it is. So we have, I guess, this nano fabrication, nano characterization center that really has all the needs for my research. And I just go across the street and I use instruments like the transmission electron microscopy, something called X-ray diffraction, to really characterize my samples. And they have everything I need in terms of fabrication, characterization, and really makes it easy for me to do my own nanoscale research. In terms of collaborations, like I said, it is really a wide variety. One of the really cool projects I worked on with another professor was with Professor David Wright, and we used nanoparticles in kind of trying to replicate PCR. And for me, I was like, I'm a chemist. I have no idea how biological systems work. And it's really, really cool to see that collaboration across that spectrum and working with different institutes and different departments to do this. And my committee members, as well, like the institutes that they work in. I have one person who's an organometallic professor, so he's really into chemistry. I have my chemistry professor. I have Josh Caldwell, who, like Elena says, from the Naval Research Lab, and then I have Professor Sandra Rosendahl, who does a lot of quantum dot and kind of imaging of like brain and brain cells and understanding that. So it's really, really a wide range of things that you can do here.
So I will co-sign on how awesome VINCE is. It's just full of toys that you never knew that you. And I think that's one of the coolest things that we have. And you'll be amazed that you can make and characterize within VINCE. Plug in, go use VINCE, check out VINCE. But Elena's probably going to have to train you how to do it. Break it. I'm not going to say that anyone on here has broken anything, but yeah. I kind of wanted to highlight on this part the duration has played with me even being here. So when I worked in my last job at the Edgewood Chemical and Biological Center, I got to visit Vanderbilt and meet with some of the faculty who were doing projects with the department. That's actually how I got to meet my professors. Like, wow, you're doing some really good DOD already. Hey, can I come be in your lab? Oddly enough, also, Vanderbilt has one of the very educational partnership agreements, which allows the soldiers at the 101st to kind of see academics here at Vanderbilt on new ways to develop to solve their problems. That effort is really being led by Dr. Adams in mechanical engineering, who happens to be on my committee, because he is very much focused on that collaboration between the development of projects or specific application of the DoD and our ability to modernize and to solve those problems. Additionally, my particular research is focused on photosystem 1. Crazy thing happened about 6 years ago. The Army was very, very invested in biohybrid that was doing the research lab. That person is now a committee. They are also focused on the research that I'm doing, so that what I'm doing is building upon the work that was done in the research lab and here in the past, and it all kind of works together. So I think I kind of highlight that to demonstrate that the program is very collaborative in nature, not just built, but externally. We have different ways to connect outside of the university, and not just for tools, but our applications, which is I think is pretty cool, because it's something when I'm no longer here that I may still have an opportunity.
All right. No, thank you so much for highlighting those different features that, the different resources that are at your disposal when it comes to being in the IMS programs. I think that's a excellent way of highlighting of how everything works. Let's move on to the next topic. So tell us a little bit about kind of, what was it about, so why did you want to apply to Vanderbilt? Why did you want to go to graduate school? And then with that, what are some tips you can give our listeners about, what are some things that, that you think, would be useful advice in terms of, going about the application? What are some things that you think work for you that may be, good advice that you can share with them about how to go about the process of applying to the university?
I can start off with this one just because I have a very interesting story. So I actually originally applied under Vanderbilt chemistry. I was a chemistry major. It actually really seemed like, I should go into the chemistry program. And I actually remember I'm in my key mentor's office in undergraduate, and I get a call from Vanderbilt University, and it's actually my boss who I'm working for now, Janet McDonald. And she kind of was like, hey, I shouldn't be doing this because chemistry is my main program, but I think you'd be really, really a good fit for the material science program. I think you should apply. Caveat was the deadline was literally to the next day. So I had to grab all of my letters. I literally talking to my key mentor, hey, can I have your letter of recommendation then? Run up 2 stairs to get my other letter of recommendation. Hey, I need one more letter of recommendation from you. I kind of did that. It was crazy. Now I'm here. But I think that story one is really cool because of the way that we communicate and we collaborate across fields, that a professor in chemistry would kind of push a student away from her own program in order to better the material science program. Said a lot to me about it. In terms of applying to grad school, I think the one thing that really, it's a lot of stress. It was a very stressful process for me. And I wish I actually enjoyed it more, and I enjoyed really kind of figuring out where I want to be, what I want to do, and who I want to work for. Especially do I see myself enjoying the next 4, 5, 6 years here? And I think that's really something you should think about. Maybe the research is still super cool, but will you enjoy it at the end of the day? I think is actually a really important part that I enjoy it now, but I enjoy my program a lot. And looking back, it's because I was really lucky, not because I was keeping those things in mind.
Yeah, I can
go next.
Oh, go for
it. I initially picked Vanderbilt because I have a large family. I've got a wife and 4 small kids, ages 8, 7, 4, and 2. And a beautiful city like Nashville was a great place to come. But that's the kind of locale aspect. The other part is that Vanderbilt has a reputation that matters out in the professional world. It matters that you attended and graduated Vanderbilt. I will also say, with regard to research, you will never be limited by resources at Vanderbilt. There's not a process to, there's not some information that you want to do. There's not a tool that you want to use that you won't find here. And being able to pick an institution that has these kind of resources, both physical and human resources, and the rest of the resources that are needed to support grads, it made it a really easy decision to want to come because your research is not going to be limited by the school. There's more than enough faculty. There's more than enough equipment to do all the things that you want to do. I would recommend, with regard to applying to grad school, first and foremost, make sure you reach out to the faculty. It's a lot easier to get into a program when faculty are invested in you coming. So reach out to the faculty, get to know them, be more than just the name that comes across there. Be with them beforehand, do that. Get to know the you're trying to be in the program, and let them be your advocate on your behalf. I also like to highlight the two superstars who are the absolute truth, and that's Sarah and everything to make sure that our app and files, they're the IMS program staff who I strongly recommend if you are interested in IMS, reach out to Sarah and Alicia, because they are a godsend in making sure you have everything the right way. They will be absolutely honest with you, upfront with you, and they will be invested in getting you here and helping you do the thing. Hopefully I'm not speaking out of turn, because they're like, no, don't call me. But they will say, yeah, call, help you. Anyone that wants. The most important thing I would say is start early. Don't wait till the last minute. It worked out for Jeremy because Jeremy's awesome. But don't wait till the last minute. Start early. Start asking for those letters early. Reach out to the faculty and Alicia early. Gather your letters early. Do all of that stuff as early. Come to the recruiting weekend. Join us on the live webcast. Do all of those things early. So you're more than just a name and a file or digit somewhere. You want to be the person that clearly they will be here, so that the program will want to invest in you as well.
Okay, yeah, I think I'll go next. The biggest thing I have to say is use your network. Most of us mentioned how we heard about Vanderbilt or thought about applying to grad school first when we were at REUs or doing different experiences. And so the people that you meet when you're doing those experiences are really going to help you out when it comes to applying to grad school. I mean, for me, I sent in my application to Vanderbilt, and Dr. Hagland called me like personally and was like, hey, I know we're co-authors and I noticed your application in the pile. Would you like to come visit? And so like that made my name stand out. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh, I don't have any connections at Vanderbilt. Yeah, you do. You're here. You can reach out to any of us or Gabriel, and we can put you in touch with the right people. So that's a network. Sarah Ross and Alicia McCord, who are program coordinators, you can reach out to them on LinkedIn. Sarah says that she does mentioned to me last week that she does a lot of helping people there. So yeah, don't hesitate to, use those connections that you make to your advantage, and reach out, because people at Vanderbilt are very welcoming. That's something that really drew me to the program here, is that it's not cutthroat at all. People love to collaborate. We want people to come here and we want them to succeed. So certainly don't feel shy about reaching out and, finding your place here.
Yeah, I want to definitely emphasize what Elena just said of the environment from the beginning. Like, first stepped foot on campus, like I'd never been to Tennessee before, flew in from LA and was so encouraged and like, I guess kind of surprised about how kind everyone was, whom, like I'd never met them before and just kind of wasn't sure what to expect from this like kind of big research institution. And there's all these like engineers and I'm coming in not as an engineer and that sort of thing. But having, and this is carried through to this day, of the emphasis being both on pursuing excellent research. And like John mentioned, like there's really excellent facilities here. Kind of the sky's the limit with the questions you want to be able to ask and potentially try to answer. And on that front, it's wonderful. But also on the front of being cared for as a student and as a graduate student and feeling supported in my relationships with other people in my program and with my coworkers in my lab, and that there is care for you as an individual person who has a life outside of your research, and also for pursuing excellence in your research. And those two, like, feeling really balanced and feeling that there's not this culture of sort of like you work 90 hours a week and you don't sleep for 5 years, like that's something that I think is really balanced just kind of on campus in general, and is also helped by how small our program is. And I think that's a huge plus, and was definitely attractive to me too, to like, I know everyone's face in IMS, even if I don't know them super well personally. And most people I've had at least a conversation or two with. And I really like that, because it allows not only for interesting conversations to come up when we have like a social hour or before one of our seminars, but it also means that like you're never just sort of like another graduate student who's just like doing research off in a corner, you know. You can't sort of disappear like that. You're seen by other graduate students and by Sarah and Alicia. And I think that's really important. So
I'm going to kind of jump in on that, because I just want to say, like, I love the community here in the material science program, especially, I think, and there's that other aspect of, I have friends in the chemical engineering department. I have friends in the engineering department. I have friends in the mechanical engineering department. But I have this, I guess, a little bit closer, more intentional cohort in the material science program that makes me feel very supported and very seen. And the intentionality, because there are less students, is a really, really big part of the Vanderbilt IMS atmosphere.
Not to like triple down on this, but like IMS is such a community that we have people from other departments who are adopted IMS students and who just come to our events and like our social hours. And so, like, I'm sure there's people who don't know that they're not IMS, because it's such a like fun community to be in, and you really make good connections across all the disciplines.
Yes, no, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, you make a really good point about just showing the kind of, also networking opportunities that you get by being in one program, but with access to almost every program, just in that one kind of space. And so I think that's something that, whether it be for just your own kind of future career prospects, or just being able to, get to know about the different workings of how, interdisciplinary research works at Vanderbilt. IMS is a very, very good example of how that works. So there is a question in the chat from Chloe that I just wanted to jump in and just ask everybody. So she asked, was there any difficulty in working under a professor that has a different focus area than you have? And if yes, how so? So for this question, like, if it doesn't apply to you, don't worry about, you don't have to, answer it. But if you have had that type of experience, go ahead and have a shot at answering the question.
Just because this was exactly my story when I showed up. So I was on a very short timeline. And like I said, my last master's was biomedical engineering, human adipose-derived stem cells. I'm ready to get into BSL2, do some tissue engineering. And my professor is an electrochemist. I know nothing about electrochemistry. So that was a very big shift immediately walking in. Now, you do have the opportunity to rotate through multiple labs when you first. That's a requirement. Through multiple labs, you can see different groups and work with them so that you can find out what you're interested in. But given that line, I didn't do that. It was not difficult from the standpoint that my professor is awesome. He gave me a lot of leeway, put me in the right classes, and gave me the opportunity to kind of figure out what I knew and what I needed to know to be successful moving forward. One of the advantages with IMS is not just being able to really pick your professor and pick your committee, but it's also kind of giving your professor an opportunity to go into an area that they may not do with their traditional group. So if, since your professor has all the people working, but you're the one IMS person and you've got something that you want, really has this bio or mechanical aspect to it, they may have just been waiting for that opportunity for that collaboration to happen. So I would consider it more of an opportunity for a professor that doesn't do kind of what you think you want to do yet, for them to do some more things. And it also may be an opportunity for you to do some things that you didn't even know you wanted, which is actually pretty fun as well. So there's a couple of ways that can go. You can change your mind. You can change the professor's mind, give them an opportunity, or you just change the professor. All of those are options for you.
Really well said, John. And I wanted to say that, you know, IMS does offer a lot of fixed flexibility in the coursework. So say you're rotating and you're like, I really like this professor, I like this group, but I'm kind of missing some of the basics. Most professors will teach a course, and in that course, they will most likely cover the basics of what their research is or what their group does. So again, I came from physics, not really an engineer, but my advisor taught a course like fall of my first semester, and like I still reference the notes I took in those lectures. So you can always talk to your professor and talk to that professor and say, are you teaching a course? Do you recommend courses? Maybe talk to people in the lab and ask them. And it's, I think that I've seen many students fill in gaps either from, you know, not covering that in undergrad or just coming from a different background through their coursework here, and just seamlessly continue on to their research.
All right. Yeah, so if there's no one else that wants to jump in, we'll move on to the next question. And also during this time of, you know, this part of the conversation, like for all of our listeners, like feel free to send us your questions. All right. So have them coming in. We'll try to get to as many as we can before we finish out tonight. But in the meantime, I do have another question I wanted to ask the group. So given the numerous different possibilities and outcomes, you know, from being in a program like IMS, you know, career-wise, what do you think you'd want to do with that, you know, after you graduate with that type of preparation and background?
So my only goal is, or my only wish, hope, is that I work in nanotech or anything that has to do with nanotechnology, especially with nanoparticles. I've already seen the wide variety of work that nanoparticles and nanotech can kind of be incorporated in. And I think in terms of my career, like, I think we are at a really interesting point of science where a lot of these projects really do require this collaboration. They don't necessarily require like one person who can do everything, because I don't know, my brain cannot comprehend biology or physics that well. It can comprehend like the chemistry of materials, and I really foresee myself working in an industry or in a government lab that really thrives on that conversation of, okay, here are the nanoparticles I can make, or here are the nanomaterials that I can make, and how can we incorporate them into these other applications or projects.
Yeah, I
was just going to add, I kind of already, we keep doing that. Go ahead, Lexi.
It's really, it's fine. I think there's just a slight lag, but you go for it.
I was just going to say, I kind of already have my job. I'm still in the Army. But what's important to me is that the Army doesn't need me to put on a white lab coat and go into a lab. This to really translate the complex and really technologically advanced research and capabilities into things that the rest of the organization can understand. That helps us make better decisions, which is another reason why real collaborative environment environment is so important. I'll just be really good at photovoltaics. I need to be able to hear about bioengineering, about articles, about multi-phased materials and metamaterials, and be able to explain that in a way that's really relevant so that we can make good decisions going forward and make investments going forward, so that we're not investing in 1980s technology anymore. Let's to the future. So really, this program is preparing me to go be a better translator to the force, so we can make better decisions.
So primarily what I've been thinking about in terms of post-graduation career opportunities right now has been more in the realm of science education, particularly as I've had the opportunity to mentor some undergraduate students the past year and have really enjoyed that in discussing kind of like what makes a good scientist. What does that mean at various levels, as a high schooler versus a college student versus a graduate student? And also, how can I help as a scientist who has this opportunity to be trained at a pretty high level right now? How can I improve sort of science communication to those who are outside of the academy, and make science more accessible, just kind of in general, for people who aren't interested in being career scientists, but it's still important to translate knowledge in that way. So that's kind of the realm I'm sticking around right now. And I don't know if that's going to be more of a thing I do on the side and then kind of go into biomaterials research full time, or get more into the education side of it as a professor or teacher. But both of those are things are really important to me.
For me, I think that I want to move into industry after I graduate. And so one thing that's really fun about grad school is that we are the ones doing the research. I mean, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's frustrating, mostly fun. But we're the ones doing the research. So we're on the very, the cutting edge. We're doing, maybe proof of concept. We're trying to hit benchmarks. We're really just trying to explore our own little perimeter spaces and see what's out there. And while I love doing that, sometimes I'm like, man, when is this ever going to, really hit the market? And so I think that after I graduate, I would like to kind of move on to that next stage of technology development, where there's kind of the research and the development when you're kind of finding out, all right, so what can we do with this material, say? And then there's the next stage where you're, all right, well, how do we manufacture this on a mass scale? How do we distribute it? What are the applications and limitations of this? And then there's the, final consumer stage. And so I think as my career advances, I want to move more towards that middle stage, or at least try it out. I can always move back.
Well, and I'm glad you all shared your different kind of career goals that you're looking at. Or John is right now in his job also, so he's not necessarily, his situation is a little different. He's not going to necessarily go out and look for a new job necessarily, but those who are, going to go out into the workforce and you're looking for employment, you're thinking about what to do, is nice, because I think a lot of students may also get the idea of, okay, if they do a PhD, that probably means that most people wind up going into academia, and it's actually not necessarily the case, because you do have a lot of research and development, opportunities that are in industry or that are in, government agencies or, government labs, so to speak, national labs. And so there's not just kind of a clear cut path. There's many different roads and avenues that you can take, depending on, how do you want to utilize your talents and into what sector of the workforce. And so I think it's great that you highlighted those different options, because it really shows and gives the students an idea of, oh my goodness, look at all these possibilities out there with what you can do with a PhD degree. But I would say definitely, what it sounds like, all of you are definitely wanting to go into something that is definitely going to be research based. whether that be in industry or academia or in another area, or for example, with the military. So yes, no, thank you for sharing that. We do have 5 minutes left. I see that we have a question from Blake. And his question is, how would you describe your work-life balance at Vanderbilt? Yes, feel free if you want, like maybe every person, you can, each one of you can maybe just kind of give us a 30-second kind of rundown of how you go about that. And we'll see if there's any other questions that come in the last 5 minutes, and we'll go from there.
I can start us off. I'd say better than it used to be. And that's due to a whole bunch of factors I won't get into too much. But I say the most important things to me that I prioritize are my community, my friendships here with in-person people, and friendships with people who are far away, and remembering frequently and reminding my friends who are in graduate school that we don't just exist to be in graduate school, because I think obviously we're all here because we're really driven, highly motivated people who know how to work hard. We don't need to be taught how to do that. Usually it's kind of the other way, to be taught to rest, and the importance of resting and exercising and taking care of your spiritual, emotional health lets you be a better researcher in the end and a better graduate student, but that's not the point, right? So prioritizing my health and wellness and like all the different areas has been the best thing for me.
Yeah, I think one thing that's very difficult, or it's something that you have to learn as a graduate student, is that you spend all day like thinking about these problems, and so you can leave the lab, but it's difficult for me, and I think many grad students, to like take your brain out of the lab and to stop like ruminating on these problems while you're not in the lab. But luckily, Nashville has a lot of fun things to do that can kind of take you out of that space. And like Lexi said, you can come back with a refreshed brain and maybe take a new crack at it. But some things that I've been involved in around Vanderbilt, in Nashville, I used to go salsa dancing before the pandemic. That kind of threw a wrench in things, but hopefully I'll get back to that. There's also graduate students can go to the Vanderbilt gym or the rec center. So there's swimming, some climbing, weight room, all of that there. I think exercise is really important, particularly for people who do computation and just sit at their computer all day. Exercise is very important, I think, for staying balanced. And then there's always concerts. There's quite a bit of art available in Nashville. So the city is really yours to explore, and once you finally do make it out of the lab.
I think that
wanted to add, even the situation is a little different. I get to come home to a bunch of kids, and it is normally in the Army. I get to drop at school, and so I love that. I do, for the most part, turn off the lab when I get home because I end up having to. But one of the things I will highlight for people thinking about their work-life balance, this is why it's so important to really think about who you pick for your PI. You want to make sure that you're picking somebody where their pace of the research and where they are in their career is something that you can support and will work for you in your timeline. So a lot of that is under your control. You can help decide what your pace is going to be.
Kind of speaking upon everybody's experiences, I think Vanderbilt has a great work-life balance community. But I also think that like Nashville itself kind of really leads us to opportunities that have really good work-life balance. And Nashville is a really interesting city where it's not too big, so you don't feel lost, but it's definitely not too small where there's nothing to do, right? I came from a 2-stoplight town. The best thing to do when I was growing up was go to the Walmart. There's so many Walmarts here. But like some of the things I've done, like literally one time I was like in my own head. So like I drove an hour on like a Friday afternoon and went to some waterfalls with my dog and like things like that, and like enjoying the nature. I am really intentional about the activities I do that so that I don't constantly think about research. And one of those things I do is like Muay Thai. And so if I don't focus on what I'm doing, I'm going to get kicked in the head, and I don't want that. So really, and like, yeah, I think one of the really cool things about grad school is finding out how to be an adult and enjoying things in life while also furthering your own career.
All right, wonderful. We are at the 8 o'clock mark. I did want to just squeeze one real quick question in because I think it is very important to the listeners out there. And just, I guess with this, when it comes to responding to it, if you just want to give me just like, we'll try to keep it 30 seconds a person. We'll just try to do, even though I know it's kind of challenging to do that, which is a good thing. Everybody's gotten really, into this conversation, which is good. And it seems like we almost need like another hour just to kind of cover all the different topics that we should be talking about. But for 1 hour, I think we've done pretty good. Last thing, real quick, final thoughts, final word of advice to the people listening out there. What is something that you just want to leave them with in terms of a message? All right. And I'll just leave it at that.
Final thoughts are it's an incredible privilege to get to be in school, to get paid to be in school, to basically sit and be surrounded by really intelligent, motivated people who are asking good questions, and to get to ask questions with them. And I think that's at the end of the day what drew me to grad school is like, I want to be better at asking questions, and I want to be better at learning how to find answers to them, which is, I think, really at the back of why we do science in a lot of ways.
I think what I would say is don't wait for the reward, enjoy the journey. Especially like when you're going to your PhD, we're all high achieving. We're all, what's the next step? And what's the next step? And what's the next reward? And for me, it's been a really, really valuable journey of realizing, okay, there's always going to be something else that I'm chasing for. And if I'm not enjoying what I'm doing now, if I'm not enjoying this kind of level of growth, then what am I doing?
I guess I'll say, one, it's a big deal that you're here listening to this conversation, and I'm grateful for it. You've already taken a first step. You've already decided that it's in you to do more and to build more. Keep going. Keep pushing forward. Keep investing you. Keep believing in what you so that you can be your very best self. Don't put the limits on yourself to say, oh, I'm not like them. I'm from a small school, or I wasn't great at this, or I don't. No. We need people who are committed to solving hard problems, that are committed to things. The future literally depends on you deciding I'm going to do things. So I'm excited that you're here, and I look forward to helping you get to the next place. Just keep going.
Lots of really great answers. What I want to leave you all with is what I said earlier, which is use your network and then build your network. That doesn't always, have to be like handing out business cards to people. Talk to people in the hall that you see in the lab across the hall. Talk to people at the coffee machine in your department office. Go to seminars that aren't, super related to your own research, but hey, they have coffee and bagels and you can learn something new. Talk to faculty in the elevator. Reach out to us. I think that, at the very worst, you make a friend, and at the very best, you can open up collaborations that you hadn't even anticipated.
Yes, I think excellent. Well, I want to first of all thank you all for participating in tonight's panel. It's definitely been a pleasure, being able to be on this panel and to listen to all your different, just great stories that you have to share with these prospective students. So, what we'll do is, so after tonight's event, so for those of you who are listening right now that registered on a registration link, I will be following up with you. And so I did hear that some students also wanted to be in contact with the panelists. So if it's okay with the panelists, I'll also forward your contact information to them if they want to reach out to you and ask you some questions, student to student. So we can do that. Thank you so much. Next month, we will have another Vanderbilt University School of Engineering graduate program conversation hour. But for this month, it was with Interdisciplinary Material Science. And it's been a pleasure. Stay safe, and we will all be in contact. Thank you all so much, panelists. It was a pleasure.